Yo guys, today I'm back with another video, and today I'm back with quite an exciting video. Today's video is going to be all about my driving experience and how I learnt to drive, how I started driving and all that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in wanting to find out how I got onto a driving instructor and all that sort of jazz, then this video is for you, and keep watching. Let's go. So I have written down a list of things that I would wanted to know, it's suddenly going to get darker, that I would have wanted to know when I started driving, or just general things that are helpful to know. We love lighting. But yeah, so I've just written down a list and we're just going to go through the list, and yeah, hopefully it will help you. They're kind of tips, they're kind of not, but I'm just hoping that this will help someone that wants to learn to drive. This video will also be quite long. I personally decided to learn manual because I thought if you learn manual and pass manual, then you can then do a manual or automatic car, whereas if you just learn automatic you can't then drive manual. So that is the reason why I did manual, but it's whatever you find easier. Some people start driving manual and then find they would rather do automatic. There's nothing wrong with that, you just sort of have to figure it out when you start driving, or if you already have an idea then obviously go with that. And basically I first started driving in November, so I actually had my first driving lesson on my birthday. As if you'd have watched my vlogs then, or if you've been watching my vlogs, then you will know that that is when I had my first driving lesson. And so I had it on my birthday, and sometimes you can't do this because your instructor's too busy, but if you book it in advance then usually you can. But before you can book your driving lesson, you have to make sure you have your provisional driving licence. So I actually ordered, you can order it a few months before your birthday because it takes a while to be processed and to come. So I ordered it in about August and my birthday was November, so that gave me a couple of months for it to come and be processed. And then by the time it came, obviously, was when, obviously, just before I turned 17. So 17 in the UK is the legal age that you can start driving on the roads. So I started driving and it took me around 8.5 months to pass. I don't think that was too long. I think the average person often takes around 6 to 9 months to pass the test, so I think I did okay and I'm happy. But it's obviously not a competition. Some people it might take a really long time, and there's no problem with that at all. Like if I'm doing this with my hands that you can't even see, and there's obviously no problem at all if it takes you that slightly bit longer. It doesn't matter, everyone's different. You just have to go with it and see what happens. But some people pick it up so much easier than others and pick it up quicker and just go for it and are absolutely fine, where some people it takes a bit more time to get their confidence and to understand and that. Also, once you have got your provisional, had your first few lessons, it's then kind of time to start looking into booking your theory. Now I personally think it's best to do your theory after a couple of months of driving at least, because then you learn the road signs and you pick them up as you're driving, because you're like, oh well, that means one way or whatever. But I'm not saying you need to start driving before you can take your theory, because I know I have friends that have passed without even starting driving. So you could do it on your birthday, because I know a few people that have done that. But yeah, so you could do it on your birthday. It's completely up to you, what you feel is best. It's all I can say, everyone's different. But basically, as well as that, I probably did it, so I did my theory in February, which I think was the right time for me. I did wait quite a long time because I wanted to pass first time and not have to pay again, because you do have to pay for your theory and your practical. Once I had done that and I passed that first time, and also with your test, your practical and your theory, when you book it you have to wait quite a while, so you won't get a test like tomorrow. You generally have to wait at least a month, if not more, depending on what days you can do. If it's a Saturday or Sunday, you have to wait longer than if you can do a Monday or Friday. I think I did it on a Monday, I can't quite remember, I'm pretty sure it was a Monday or it was a Friday. But just doing it on one of them days is a lot better, because then you're more likely to get it quicker. This massively makes perfect. Like if you practice all the time, which I know I did towards passing my test, that's definitely going to help. If you don't go out, like if you can get, I got insured on my car, but if you can get insured on a family car or someone's car, a friend's car, that would be really helpful for you, because I know that if I didn't have my car and I wasn't insured in it, then I certainly would not have passed when I did. I think it would have taken me longer, because if you are practicing, then like my dad would pick me up from college, because obviously you have to drive someone that's over 21 and had a licence for 3 years. So I definitely think if you're with someone and you can take them out a lot, they can take you out a lot, then that's just so much easier. Like I really recommend that. I was just lucky that I was able to buy my car before my actual like before I pass my test. Some people don't, and that's completely up to you again. So if you can get insured on another car, you don't really need to buy your car until you pass, you know. Also, don't rush into your practical test too early, because I know that it's very difficult and you're so like, oh, I can drive, I want to do it. You've learned everything you can learn after like 20 hours. You're like, I'm going to go in for it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, some people can be passed as they're fantastic driver, you know, but all I'm saying is you don't have to necessarily rush into it. Just do it when you feel ready, and obviously you have to book it, so you have to be thinking, well, how much have I improved since last month? So you think this time next month I'll be able to be prepared for my test. So you just sort of got to figure it out. When I first put in for my test, I thought I was really ready, but I feel like I learnt a lot more the second time round, even though I was more nervous the second time round. Like, the second time round, you know the routine and what's going to happen. But I think personally you need at least about 40 hours of driving to pass. I mean, I did a bit more than that, because I did at least 40 hours of driving lessons plus some hours driving around in my car. I do think 40 hours is a fair amount of hours. I don't really know many people that probably passed under that amount, but obviously if you can, some people pass in about 35 hours, then well done you know. But I just think personally you need about 40 hours to be like confident and safe to be like driving around. And then also, if you end up doing your test like more than once, then it's going to cost you more. So especially if you're on a budget, make sure you don't rush into it and know you're ready, because otherwise you're just going to be costing yourself more. Also, just enjoy your lessons, because although you're thinking, oh, I just want to get them done, and I'm glad that going to be like, you know, you're going to be glad when you're driving around. Obviously, it's fantastic and so fun with the freedom to be driving around, but enjoy them, because I think when they're not there, you kind of miss them, because it's like going to a club for like 9 months to a year, because you're so used to doing that one thing at that one time, like once a week or however many times a week. So do enjoy your lessons, because even though you're thinking towards the goal at the end of passing and driving around, do enjoy them while you're doing it. Don't just think, oh, they're a chore or whatever. Do enjoy them, because after they're gone you kind of feel a bit weird about not having them. Also, figure out how many hours a week would suit you. What would suit you if you're in college, if you're in sixth form. Like, what days are best for you? Most during the week, like obviously where I was at college, I had a Friday and a Monday free, so I decided to have them on a Friday, so I'd have them most of the time on a Friday, occasionally on a Monday, and then nearer to my test I had like one before on the Wednesday. So it's completely up to you, but I personally found I started off with 2 hours a week, and I found that was quite a lot, having it all in one bit. But if maybe you've had an hour and an hour, it wouldn't be too bad. But then I felt like in an hour I didn't do enough. So I think I ended up having 1.5 hour lessons, and that was what suited me best and what I could like learn best in. But obviously everyone's different, so an 1.5 hours might not be someone else's perfect time to learn it. So for my manoeuvres, I think you just got to practice them. Like, I was never very good at parallel parking. I've always been better at reverse bay parking than forward bay parking, but I used like different marks and like guidelines sort of things that would tell. So when I got like to a certain line, that would be like my mark to like turn. Just go over your manoeuvres as much as you can. There's this website which is really helpful for when you first start learning in like the first 20 hours, and I will link it below. And basically it shows you like, I think it's like 1 to 12 or 1 to 16 or like a lesson plan, and it's really helpful because it covers like hill starts, parallel parking, bay parking, and although it might be slightly different to how your instructor's teaching it, it just sort of gives you an idea of what to expect. So if your instructor says to you, oh, we're going to do hill starts next week, then you can have a look on it. And also other videos and everything on YouTube are really helpful, and it will like guide you on what maybe you might do for that hill start or how to do it or things like that. And I personally found that really helpful, because then I felt like I could prepare myself for my next lesson. So obviously you only really do that in the first like 16 to 20 hours, but that was a really helpful website, so I'll try and link that down below if I can remember it. But if not, just Google, go on YouTube, find out things if you know what you're doing your next lesson, or just if you want to get like better at it, you know. You can also find out if you can book block lessons, because block lessons are sometimes cheaper than having single lessons, but obviously depends on what your budget is. When you do your test, make sure you are prepared, so you know your manoeuvres, you know the area around your test centre, and you know the routine of what's going to happen. I also think it's really good to treat it as a normal day, because if you go in thinking it's my test day, you might panic more, whereas if you go in thinking just a normal day, wake up completely normal, not in a different routine, and then do your hour before your driving lessons, before your test, because that's what you usually do. Stay calm, and then when you get in the car, just think that it's a normal lesson, and that is obviously easier said than done, because you've got a completely different person sitting next to you, and you're in a different environment. But I would really recommend, and also maybe visit the test centre before your test. Don't necessarily go right in, but just know where it is, so you know where you're going to be coming out of and the roads surrounding it. So know the show me tell me questions, because you guys might think they don't mean much. Like, I didn't even know when I first started driving there was show me tell me questions. Like, I thought that you're practical, you don't do questions because you've done them in your theory, but there are questions and you mustn't forget about them. So the show me questions are questions that you do on the road, so they could be like, show me how you operate the horn, or show me how you undo the side window, show me how you turn on the windscreen wipers or clean the windscreen, things like that. They're sort of show me questions. And tell me questions are things that you do when you first get in the car or when you're going to the car at the test centre. So there's bonnet ones, there's like check the oil, and like the engine coolant and things like that. There's different, maybe not the engine coolant, I can't remember what the one is exactly, brake fluid I think it is. And then there's also ones like tell me how you know that the tyres are safe to drive in and things like that. But you can find all the up to date show me tell me questions online on the website, or also you can just YouTube it, and there's so many videos that will help you with that to remember them. I really recommend knowing them, because you'll feel more prepared if you know them off by heart. My questions weren't too hard. I had to open the window and check the oil, so they weren't awful questions. Now the very last thing that I want to talk about, I think I've covered most of it, but the very last thing I want to talk about is the difference between a petrol and a diesel car. Now, when I first got my car, so I got my car back in, it's not February, it must have been about March or April time. Now, when I bought my car, I obviously was intending to probably buy a petrol, because they're cheaper to run, and lower litrage engine. Now, I had a bit of a shock when I first was driving my car, because I struggled and I stalled it a lot, and I mean a lot, because it was so different. Now, petrols are very easy to stall, and you have to put a lot more gas than you do in a diesel. And most instructors use diesel cars because they're harder to stall than petrol, which obviously makes sense, because if you're a learner you want the easiest you can. But the only thing with that is that when you then get in a petrol car, which you're most likely to buy once you pass your test, you then are like stuck. Now, my instructor actually came out with me in my own car and helped me, but he taught me the petrol way in the diesel car first, because it's just basically where you set the gas and get the bite too. And I'm so used to that now, obviously I've done it quite a long time, but I really struggled at first, and I literally could not drive my car, like I just couldn't drive it. So I really recommend, so when I first brought it, I had no idea there was so much of a difference between petrol and diesel. I just thought, oh, you know, they sort of drive the same. I didn't think too much of it, but I really recommend you looking into that rather than buying a petrol car and then thinking, oh, I can't drive it very well. I mean, it might have been because my car's about 10 years old. Maybe if you get the newer petrols, because I know some of my friends have newer petrols, they're not so bad. But I'm just saying, although diesels might be more expensive and more expensive to run, really look into it, or maybe test drive it, or figure out something you can do, because obviously to our parents and that, like petrol and diesel is probably not much difference, but to a first time driver I assure you it is. And I really recommend either test driving or figuring out if you can drive petrol very well, because though you obviously get used to it, it's very difficult to start, because how I was when I was taught to drive, I was taught just to use the biting point on the clutch and then take the handbrake off and go, whereas in a petrol you obviously have to set the gas, and it's a bit more complicated. But then my parents were sort of told to get like the gas and the biting point at the same time. So I don't know, there's lots of different ways to be taught, but my instructor explained to me it's basically like how you do a hill start in a diesel is how you put away in a petrol all the time. That's how I can explain it, the simplest way to explain it. So if you're good at hill starts, no problem with a petrol car. That's basically it. You just have to do it all the time. But yeah, so I think that's kind of all I needed to update you guys on. I don't really know. I think that's the main points that I wanted to tell you guys. But if you do have any questions or anything you want to know about my driving experience or how I learnt to drive, then please feel free to comment down below and I'll try and answer them. Well, I will answer them, you know. But yeah, I absolutely loved my whole driving experience. I'd love to do it all again. Well, I wouldn't, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, it was a fantastic experience, and I would so recommend anyone who is debating whether to learn to drive or wants to learn to drive and has the opportunity to learn to drive, because it's just such a fantastic thing. Like, the freedom of just being able to get in your car and go out is crazy. Like, you kind of feel like you're being bad behaved by going out without an adult. But it's just such a nice freedom, because you can go pick up your friends, you can go to the beach, you can go to Sainsbury's and McDonald's, anywhere you want to go, you can go. Like, it makes so much easier, just costs a lot of money to run a car, but it just makes your life so much easier, and you can be an independent person. And for a 17-year-old to be that independent, where you can just drive wherever, whenever, without relying on public transport, is such a big thing. Like, it's crazy. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed these sort of videos, and I'll see you in the next video. Let's go.